our goal today is to inspire students,
Okay. My name is Rick Griffith. I'm a designer here in Denver, Colorado. I own a studio called Matter with my partner Deborah Johnson, and Matter does three things, or at least does three things in a very broad sense. Number one, it's a graphic design studio. Number two, and by studio I mean consultancy. We do a lot of different things for a lot of different types of people. That doesn't mean that we don't do brand work, but we also do support work for government programs. We also do consulting, and we try and give design some legs wherever we meet the need. Uh, the other thing is that I also am a letterpress printer, so I own about five, maybe six printing presses. And in with those printing presses, I use it as an extension of my writing practice. And my writing practice is something which is a kind of burgeoning practice where people are asking me for my sort of cultural critique, or they're asking me for some in-depth analysis on what's going on in the world or in the design scene or in the community. And I generally offer it in either some oratory or in writing, and the press allows me to get some things off my chest when I'm sort of inspired to do that. I'm not always inspired to print it, but I've found that it's a healthy release of some of the air that might build up in the pressure that is to be alive in this time and place. And then the last thing we do is we own a bookstore. The bookstore focuses on two things. One is cultural and social justice, and the other one is design. And where those meet is the tension of our practice. Where that meet is the tension that exists for a lot of graphic designers about how they can be more focused on what can be right in the world, or to make more things right in the world, than just to be in a practice that is in some ways either encumbered by or in service of capitalism and all the things that are generally wrong with unbridled capitalism. So,
For me, I realized, several years ago, I'm another white dude in the classroom and trying to find people besides me to inspire students, right? It was easy for me to get inspired when I got through school because there was another white instructor there teaching. So I'm trying to change that in my own classroom and to make sure that the students that don't look like me understand that they have the same opportunities and can go farther than I ever thought about going. With that being said, that's kind of where I'm coming from as we kind of begin this.
yeah, I mean, that's fair. A lot of people say that. I'm not sure if I respond um, like sort of openly positively to that sort of approach. The reason why is mostly because um, I have no need for you to apologize for who you are, and you didn't choose to be born that color. And the most important thing that you can do is to care about the students who you're teaching in a way that helps them see things that inspire them. So, I mean, kudos to you. I don't know if the students need that tacit apology. I certainly don't. But I appreciate your motive towards helping your young people find inspiration, and also helping them find their way in life with, you know, models that look like them, or models that
Yeah.
might have some similar experiences to them.
Yeah, thanks. That was great. Yeah, and yeah, for me it's always been about like, okay, so um how do we engage the students to get them excited? Because for the last couple of, for years now, I've realized, so I'm a professional photographer by trade. That's what I've done for most of my career for the last 20 years.
Sure.
And, you know, 80% of the field, 83% of the field is, from what I've looked at, is about white male that looks very similar to me. So how do we get to a place that people that don't have the same privilege as I did growing up can still get the same opportunities? And That's always my goal of my department, is like just giving new opportunities to people that didn't realize they could actually have them and succeed.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest though, sometimes it can be kind of inspirational to know that there aren't that many people with your
Oh,
background in the space, so that people who think that their offering is unique generally end up being accurate about that. So,
that's great.
um, if the whole thing is, if all of rock and roll is milk toast, then Jimi Hendrix has got a shot,
Yeah.
and Prince has a shot, and other great guitarists like what's his name? Um, it's gonna come to me. I'll do a quick search over here.
Okay.
Oh, Vernon Reid. Vernon
Oh,
Reid has a chance, and that's a legitimate way to create a really high bar for yourself as well, and to
that's awesome.
participate and participate in something that, like, might need your voice, might need your perspective. And there are still very few Black graphic designers in in the world comparatively, or very few Black graphic designers in America. And and if America is like sort of one of the countries that supports and amplifies the effects of design, then one could say that anything that's wrong with design has got the same makeup as the people who are practicing it, which means that, it's due in some part to its commitment to capitalism and commitment to white supremacy, that, like, graphic design looks the way it looks today because America looks the way it looks today. I mean, that's sort of it's not a
Yeah.
difficult equation to write, and it's not a difficult mathematical proposition to accept. The One of the reasons why that's generally true is because um, supremacy or competition or masculinity or any number of the things that kind of we think of as urges in the wrong general direction, these things are, exercised 80% of the time by white people and 20% of the time by Black people. And technology is all part of that as well. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge to support young Black people to become better inspired, but it's also like, bring who you are to the conversation. Don't feel like the need to acculturate into something that isn't really ethically aligned with yourself or with what you believe, or don't feel that, like, you're showing up just to participate in something that you didn't create. Go ahead and create it, you know and to me, that's like the most important part of it.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you.
I was 16 years old. I was working in a record store in Fairfax County, Virginia, and I saw an album cover that I really enjoyed. And I said, I don't even know what they call the person that makes album covers for a living, but I'm pretty sure I want to be one.
That's awesome. And so you've been doing this for a year or two. Um,
Sure. That's rich. Yeah.
yeah.
It took me a while to become a graphic designer. I'll be honest with you. Like, after I identified what that was, then I had to figure out how to get an education in it. And even though I tried, I applied at the Cooper Union in New York City, and they didn't accept me. But I moved to New York anyway and taught myself graphic design with the help of bookstores and exhibitions and a membership to the Museum of Modern Art and a library card.
That's amazing. So would you say that was that some of your biggest challenges, just trying to figure out what it was, get integrated into it, and actually learn? Did you end up going to school?
No, I ended up taking unmatriculated courses at Parsons and at the new school, the Eugene Lang School there. And then I also took one night course at the Cooper Union. But And then I took one course at University of Colorado, Boulder when I arrived in Colorado many years ago. But I wouldn't say I went to college at all. I would say that I attended a couple of courses, but I wouldn't say I experienced had a college experience. I found that the reason why I didn't really need college was because I was very capable of asking my own questions. And those that capacity to ask questions and then hold them in a manner that allowed me to pursue them and research them and figure out how various answers disrupted various assumptions and so on and so
Mm,
forth. This to me was like a process that I was really good at. I'm not self-taught in everything, but I was really well educated before I moved to the United States. And what I mean by that is I was privately educated in typical British prep school fashion. I was fluent in Latin before I came to the United States at the age of 15. Um, I'd already read most of Shakespeare, Dickens, Chaucer, and Bronte. So I was very much involved in literature. Um, and of course, at a young age, if you've got that much literature, you also have a lot of questions about what the hell they're talking about, especially if it's Chaucer or Shakespeare. Some of that language is really rich and strange. So, so I had developed a lot of questions already. And I had found ways of answering those questions pre-internet. And so I really felt all through my life so far, I felt that if someone knows how to ask questions and pursue those answers, then you might not need a lot of college experience. You might need some technical training or you might need some assistance, but I wouldn't say that a college experience is mandatory. But for people who are kind of held with an ambition and they don't quite know where to start or they don't quite know where those questions come from, uh, yeah, I think finding guidance in a classroom with other people who have similar attitudes, that's healthy. That's really healthy. So I just have both my kids went to college. Both my kids went to the premier colleges of their field. One kid went to Parsons, um, and one kid's at RISD. And so, you know, I believe in the institution. I believe in going to school. I believe in advanced education, but I also think that it's largely circumstantial. If you're not granted access to it, and if you find barriers to it, and if you find that, you know, this part of your experience is rejecting who you are and whatever, then do your own thing. I I it wasn't my most difficult challenge. No. I wouldn't characterize the learning as the most difficult thing.
that's
The
awesome.
most
Yeah,
joyful thing, most exciting thing. I have a deep understanding of things that people don't even get to touch in an undergraduate degree for graphic design. I have a deep understanding of things that aren't even considered in a master's degree in graphic design. No, I wouldn't call that the most difficult experience. I have other difficult experiences for sure.
that's great. Yeah. So just to kind of throw it back, it's just, for me, I couldn't figure out the questions. I didn't know what questions to ask, which is why I ended up finding myself in school to be able to become a commercial photographer because I wasn't able to do that. And that gave it
Right.
to me. So I think it's always good to hear everyone else's experience because we all get to experience different ways, which I think is fabulous.
As a graphic designer, you know, I consume so much material over the years that my work is a measured and intelligent response to the place that the customers like ideas want to live. Like it's couched in their profession. If it's a restaurant, then it feels like a restaurant. If it's a nonprofit organization, it feels like a nonprofit organization. Like to me, it's important for me to couch the ideas that they have in the environment that they're most useful for them. So as a graphic designer, I'm much more in service of the places and the experiences that that the customer or the client has, not the stuff that like I care about. I'm much more in service of what they care about and how they want to be seen. Um, and the formal aspects of it, like what it actually looks like, that's a collection of, you know, it's easy to say after the fact, but most graphic design is the space somehow left over between what it cannot be over here, meaning in bad taste or unconnected. And then what it could be over here, meaning everything else. And as you look at the conditions or the criteria or the constraints, what it could be narrows in, and ultimately it creates such a narrow surface with your understanding of the way the world works. It creates such a narrow surface that everything that we do fits into that space, and the customer either responds to it positively or negatively, and assigns it value from the way that we think. Successful graphic design is usually married to its story. Successful graphic design is oftentimes married to the goals or the objectives of the work. And successful graphic design is oftentimes really like the beginning of a series of questions that people ask when they see it, because they are actually motivated to interact with it. So to me, the work that we do that's successful graphic design is a number of different things, but it's largely giving people access to an idea, creating curiosity, and then couching it in the space where it holds it holds a place for it in the conversation that that field is. So a good example would be if it's a barbecue place, you just kind of lean into the idea that this barbecue place lives in an atmosphere with all of the other barbecue places in the world. Now, if you understand the fairly elastic nature of barbecue places, and we'll stretch out a little bit, and then you'll say, well, it's not South Carolina, then you're like, okay, it's not that. And then you kind of dismiss everything over here that is a reference to these vinegar sauces and so on and so forth. And
Mm.
then you move into what it could be and what it is, and then you try and lean into the features. And so to me, it's always an expression of what it is. It's seldom an expression of what it isn't. And you have to be wise enough in that area or field to narrow in on what it is in the conversation that experts generally have around it.
So would you say you have a lot of research that goes into when you're first connecting with a potential client, an understanding?
Yeah, not all the best graphic design has research in it, but all the best graphic design tends to withstand criticism when people who have research and who know the field well are looking at it.
That's a great perspective. That's awesome. So, and then kind of following up with that, because those are some great answers, is, when my students are going through portfolio, so a lot of them right now for spring are getting ready to graduate. And so they're trying to create a portfolio that's cohesive, to have some sort of brand, some sort of consistency, so that if a client hires them, they have some expectation of what they're going to get. And so, is there anything like, do you disagree with kind of niching down to kind of have this brand, this idea of what there should be some sort of expectation to get hired, or do a little bit more of a little bit of everything? Does that kind of make sense in the question? Because it comes up a
Yeah.
lot.
I honestly think that portfolios are either going to be attempting to gain a client or gain a job, and those are very different portfolios.
Okay. Okay. That's
Yeah.
good to know.
Yeah.
Um,
If you're trying to get a job, then the best thing you can do is give people access to your process. And the most important question that an employer or prospective employer will have is going to be, well, um, how long did it take for you to get there? Because not everyone has um, 4 months to arrive at a solution for a project.
yeah.
And so if we're hiring somebody, we don't have 4 months for a project, we have closer to 4 weeks. And if someone can't move that fast, that's usually a challenge. So seeing their process is helpful.
What do you mean by seeing their processes? How would that look for a student to be able to showcase their process?
Some students have sketchbooks or process books, or they're encouraged towards having process books where they work out ideas. I don't think it's a bad idea to build a case study from start to finish that shows the throwaway ideas and the ones that were kept, and how
Of
something moved from being uh, just a nascent concept into something that's a finished concept.
And then also, from my perspective, a lot of what I've seen in the field is networking or communication, being able to connect to another human being so that you can work together. Have you found a good way of being able to do that, to be able to showcase as a student, as they're graduating, that they can work in groups of people, that they can share ideas and be able to work together, to be able to pull together one, website or some user interface or whatever it happens to be that they're working on?
I'm afraid I don't have a lot of skill or even feedback in that area.
Okay.
My challenge has always been that, like, when I wanted to be a graphic designer, nobody wanted to hire me. So I ended up hanging my own shingle out and opening my own business. Um, when I decided to network, or when I wanted to network, I found just as much sort of in my way as I did find people who were kind. I mean, there were very few people who were kind in my early career. In Colorado, there were two people in particular that were very kind, Bob Morehouse and Bob Taylor. Um, one of whom is dead, but Bob Taylor is reasonably well known for his work and for his egalitarian attitude. And I had a terrific personal relationship with him. And Bob Morehouse founded a studio called Vermilion Design in Boulder, and is still very successful. I think he recently retired, but the those two folks were incredibly kind, and most of the Denver people were not. And so you have to kind of either network with people who have similar values, or find yourself in spaces where your values are important and lean into that. Whatever happens in the world, I don't think you network with graphic designers or studio
Did you
owners.
freeze, Joe?
You network with people who are like who appreciate who you are and what you do. And if they happen to need graphic design, that's really terrific. Story is what happens when you pull the thread, you know? Story is like, what's behind it? Why is it this way? What else is there? What's it connected to? Um, a good example would be, like, you hear a song, you're like, I like that song. Your instinct tells you that you like a song. Then you go, okay, well, who's singing it? And then you go, and who the hell is that? And then you go, and who else is in the band? And what bands were they in? And where's this music from geographically?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, story is super powerful if you care. So I do think that the primary work is to get people to care about something, but to know that there's always a story underneath it gives people access to the things that can make them into a fan, and that can deepen their enjoyment. And that to me is about story. Like, I'm not a US person. I'm an immigrant, that's part of my story. I'm not just an immigrant. My family is four generations of immigrants. That's
Mm.
part of another story.
Yeah.
Why do I feel the way I feel about capitalism? Probably because I'm Black. That's part of the story. Like, my experience in this starts to weave a kind of story that is compulsively concerned with people who are involved in cultural conversations, It's compulsively interested in non-capitalistic things. And not everyone has that. Some people are like, I care so much about what I put on my feet. I'm in the sneaker game. I care so much about the clothes I wear or the fashion that I'm a part of. And that's part of their narrative and that's their story. They chase that because there's something in it for them. The challenge is to not just be wearing someone else's story, but to develop your own. And in graphic design, the challenge ends up being something closer to not just make some form that communicates an idea, but see if you can't give people a place to put some hooks to really be attracted to or to enjoy the backstory. That's the first Chipotle. That's the first Snooze. That's the
Mhm.
first Noodles and Company.
Yeah.
Like things like those, they have stories built into them. They really do. I would probably just want to say this, like straight up.
Yeah.
The artifact, the thing, it's it's not that important. It might be the thing that gets you to make another thing. That's great. But really it's the life. If you can have a good life doing graphic design, look for the good life. Don't be so attracted to the artifact or the object. Not everyone has the opportunity to make the Nike swoosh, or not everyone has the opportunity to make a big brand work. And chasing after those opportunities isn't necessarily a good life. I feel like what we've done is we've dedicated ourselves to having a good life, and the work that we've done, regardless of where we've done it, has some integrity, and it is about like being able to sleep well at night. It's about taking care of your family, which, surprisingly, I'm always surprised, but surprisingly, I was able to do. Um, so, we at one point in time, we had five or six of Denver's best restaurants as our clients. And so that was a really lovely thing. Like people felt that what we were doing for those restaurants was meeting, it was meeting the quality of the work that those chefs were doing. It was meeting the quality of the work that those front of house managers were doing. So everything we did in support of that was powerful and useful for them. And that has integrity for us. That's great. Where we're as good as the chef, we're as good at what we do as the chef is at what they do. Perfect marriage. So, so I don't know if it's about the artifacts. I don't know if it's about the design itself, the thing, but but having a good life in design is the goal. And some of that good life is about meeting your obligations and paying your bills on time and being a person with integrity. And I aim to continue to do that, but I've also aimed my life at being that and doing that. So I'm I'm not really a big deal. If you like, I'm a big small deal, or I'm a small big deal because of how I feel about and how I've been asked to participate in the world of design. But um, I don't anchor my worth to a piece of graphic design. I anchor my worth to my experience and my ability to encourage people towards an experience that also has integrity in it. My instinct around the future of design is this. In some cases, designers are being taught how to be critical thinkers and makers of anything that is not there, like filling gaps. Design always speaks to the need, so designers participate in gaps. I would love to see more designers having that critical capacity to put themselves in a gap that exists because people don't see the value, but there is value there. I would love to see more designers participate in politics. I would love to enter a room full of graphic designers where they all knew the name of the House Majority Leader of the place that they live. I would love to see more designers participate in the political agendas of the geographies that they live in. I would love to see more graphic designers participate in the municipalities where they can make change and make change for people who are not like them, but people who need change and need to be served. The long of that is to say, we have this thing that we do that creates influence. And it would be wonderful if we use that influence to do something more than work for the image factory called Meta, or to do more than work for people who don't need us.
Mm.
It would be ideal if we were in service of the country and the place that we want to live in versus participate in the brands that make us look good. Those brands
Awesome.
hardly need critical thinking. The critical thinking for those brands operates at a very, very high level, and that person isn't necessarily even a person that values graphic design or designers.
Mm.
So put yourself where you're valued and think about your impact on your own geography and only give your labor to trustworthy people.
Well, thank you. That was awesome. I certainly appreciate your time, Rick. Now we're following you on Instagram. I love seeing the passion that you have, that you can put out to the world. It's just been wonderful. Just the happiness and all the thoughts, it's just been so. Thank you again. I'm excited to be able to share this with my students and get them engaged. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And,
Yeah,
thanks for doing what you do too. I think it's wonderful.
thank you. Well, have a great day.
Thanks. Be well.